بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Inshallah ta'ala, wanted to continue with you the Fiqh of Fasting, of continuing our ahkam and rulings on the one of the pillars of Islam, and that is fasting. And we're continuing to tackle the issues of invalidations, what invalidates fasting, or what some people ask and so much worried about invalidation of fasting. So yesterday we stopped at the kafara. A question would come is, what is the kafara for someone that actually breaks the fast for no legitimate reason? And and it's just they just don't want to fast. They decided not to fast, so knowing that fasting is a must and what have you. So what is the rulings on that? And just to summarize it, we would say that the very first two schools of thought, the Hanafi school and the Maliki school, do think that breaking the fast with no reason would actually be treated very similar to the kafara, which is the expiation or the makeup in the future to make it. That would be the heavy penalty, which is to fast 60 consecutive days and what have you. But the only difference is that the school of Hanafi, the Hanafi school, believes that if the fast, the reason to break the fast was just because they thought they cannot fight the hunger and the thirst. They just want to enjoy that, and they don't feel like they can refrain from drinking and eating. The Maliki school does not differentiate whether a person breaks the fast or decides not to fast for nutritional reasons, just to gain some nutritions and some type of energy and what have you, or if it's for no other reason, just someone just decides to break the fast just to chew on gum, just because they just don't want that what we call semi-bad smell happen to them. They actually, all they did is just to break their fast on chewing gum and what have you. So to them, it doesn't matter. So just to make it simple, Hanafi and Maliki school believe that there should be a penalty, and that penalty is very similar to someone that has sexual relationship with his wife during the day, which is the big penalty, fasting 60 consecutive days. And of course, they still have to make up the missed days. Now, would that be every day that they break, they have to fast and make up 60 consecutive days? That's a long discussion, but it doesn't have really, we're not going to adopt any of that. So we're not going to go deep into that, because that's going to be almost impossible. Just imagine some people that have not fasted for all these years, and you multiply each day that was broken on purpose to multiply it by 60 consecutive days of fasting. Almost no human beings is going to be able to come. But again, the ruling would still be there. So if they cannot do it, then they have to pay the poor people for that. 60 poor people per day and what have you. It's going to be a very hefty penalty. Now again, this is where the flexibility of the opinions, because there is really no clarity or specific clear hadith that actually gives the answer to that ruling. The answer was very obvious to someone that would have a sexual relationship with his wife during the day. Yes, that's obvious from the verse that we learned. Now, and from the hadith, that the Sahabi and companion came to Prophet ﷺ, say that I am doomed and what have you. Okay, now let's see, 1 second. better, inshallah. So now the Shafi'i and the Hanbali school believe that this is a major sin, major sin, which requires repentance and requires regret and requires a promise of never ever going back to that act of breaking the fast with no legitimate reason, and requires a makeup for each day that was missed, and requires just the because it has not been, fasted for many years, requires also like the regular kafara of feeding a poor people per day and what have you. However, it does not, they don't see that the heavy penalty of 60 consecutive days would apply here. They don't see a dalil and a proof that would actually come strong to require that, which we will adopt in this class. We will adopt the opinion of the Shafi'i and Hanbali school, is that um, it is very heavy penalty, and since it's not based on a very strong dalil and clear cut obvious dalil, we're just gonna stick with the penalty of making up those days, and also the regular kafara, because it has not been made up between the two Ramadans and it has been delayed for many years. That to be cautious, they would make up the days and pay kafara and expiation of feeding a poor person per day that was missed, whether that was 60 days, whether it was 120 days, whether it was thousands of days because of many years back of not being able to fast. That would be the most cautious, inshallah ta'ala, is to make up the days and pay a kafara of one person per missed day. Um, we will, a question, a question about the, is that if someone actually is eating suhoor, and here's the adhan. A question would come: do I stop eating and drinking when I hear the adhan, or do I have the whole duration of the adhan? So um, the answer would be is that if we are going to follow the Jumhur, again, the majority of scholars believe that when the adhan is called, when you hear Allahu Akbar, that is the indication of the start of Fajr time. Even if the time was not absolutely precise, that was the ijtihad. Even if someone goes as a muaddin and giving a caller outside in the horizon and gives and exercise his own ijtihad of judgment of saying that okay, Fajr time now, and again, we're human beings. It could be questionable whether it was by the second or not. Same thing with the timetable that we have. So we're following a timetable now. It's not very precise. So the question, do I wait all the way or should I? We have to have an indication. We have to stop somewhere, right? So we are going to adopt the opinion that we will just go with the Jumhur, that whenever the adhan is called in the masjid, we need to stop. Whenever the table, if I am away from someone giving we're going to follow the table that belongs to our local masjid. That's it, the one that we go and pray in it. Now, what if someone actually has the food in his mouth and drinking? Of course, because we're not saying. So, yes, some scholars said, even if you have food, those who are saying, when you hear the call of the adhan, even if you have food in your mouth, to spit it out, water to spit it out, just being cautious. We have to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're being cautious, and we are not just so relaxed about this. But again, those who are not as cautious, it doesn't mean that they are too relaxed and whatever, because we're not really talking about absolute preciseness of seconds then that's why they would just say it's fine, just swallow it and drink whatever in your mouth, which is fine. There is an opinion that actually allows the person to keep drinking and eating until the end of the adhan. So we just want you to understand, as students of knowledge, that this opinion does exist and it is based on a proof. It's not like what have you, but a proof is not really a clear direct proof, but rather of practice of the Sahaba, of what was seen and what happened, which is absolutely legitimate. But we are going to follow the majority of the scholars that say stop at the beginning of the adhan. A question says, okay, if someone actually does go through the hefty penalty of 60 consecutive days because he or she had sexual relationship together during the day of Ramadan, and now they are ready to make up their days. So they're gonna make up that day, no question about it, the one that they missed. And now they want to do the 60 consecutive days together. So they're doing it now to basically do the penalty and the expiation and what have you. As they do it, the man does not have any interruption, as you know, he's just going. The women, the woman has an interruption, so her period starts, which is a legitimate reason that would force her to stop. So what would she do? She would stop until the monthly cycle clears, and then she would pick up from that point. She will not repeat. She will just pick up from that point because it's a legitimate reason that she stopped. Allah told her to stop. Or anything that would happen in that sense, any legitimate, whether it's man or woman. What could happen to a man is basically the health issue that he gets really extremely sick, so he has to break the fast and take a break, and then will continue later on when he gets better, so he will pick up on where it was left off, so he will not repeat from the beginning because it's a legitimate reason to stop. Or it could be another legitimate reason of Eid, like let's say somebody starts right after Ramadan, somewhat not right after Ramadan, yeah, let's say even if it's right after Ramadan because it's 60 days, and the Eid al-Adha, let's say Eid al-Adha comes to interrupt their consecutive fasting. That's a legitimate reason, and they would pick up and continue after they break the fast for Eid day, and so on and so forth. It would be the same answer. Remember, if someone actually dies, right? So someone actually did 50 days and 10 more days left, and he dies. And now we said in our class that his heirs, people that they will inherit him, it would be one of his heirs would make up those remaining days on his behalf. If they can't do it, then they would pay fidya on his behalf, right? So they would pick up the last 10 days that he did not complete, and they would pay. If they can't, then they would pay to feed 10 poor people to make up for those 10 last missed days that he didn't do before he actually died. So that would cover most of all the legitimate reasons. Now, I think we did cover this, but again, just to continue with our conversation, a question would come about someone that continuing with someone that has people just got married, they're not sure, a new convert or revert came into Islam and what have you, they have no clue about this ruling that they cannot have intimacy and sexual and actual intercourse during the day of Ramadan, and they actually do it. What would happen to them? The answer, if it's absolute ignorance, they have no clue that there is such thing, then again, remember, we're going to compare it like nisyan, like exactly like forgetfulness. So they don't need to do anything except that they actually don't need to do anything, or just to repent, and the day is actually accepted for them. Remember, because it's like forgetfulness. They have no clue, so they continue their fast and whatever. And if they got to know later on that this is wrong, the day is still fine because they did it without thinking that it was wrong. What if they do actually know that it is wrong, it's not allowed, but they have no clue about the penalty and the severity of the penalty of 60 consecutive days? Had them known the absolute hefty penalty, they would have thought 10 times before they would have done that act. So they didn't know. They got too excited and they thought they're just going to miss that day and they're just going to make it up later on. That, according to the opinion that is more closer to the correct view and dalil, according to the hadith that we shared together, the companion came to Prophet ﷺ knowing that he did something wrong, because he said halakt, right? I'm doomed. So he knows that it's wrong, but he didn't know what is the consequences. What am I gonna make up? What do I need to do? So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ didn't tell him, you know what, since you did not know that this was a hefty issue, you're going to be forgiven. No, he actually told him to free a slave, and he said, I can't. To fast 60 consecutive days, he said, I can't. He said, okay, then you have to feed 60 poor people and what have you. So he didn't allow him to do that. So based on that, we are going to adopt the opinion that if they were they know the ruling that they should not have intercourse during the day of Ramadan, but they did not know the severity of it. But the answer would be that they still need to make up the day and do the 60 consecutive days, because they knew that this act was wrong and it would damage their fast during that day, and they need to face the consequences of it. So, inshallah, we'll follow that opinion. What about uh, a husband that was on travel and broke the fast because of a legitimate reason, and that is he was on travel and he came home and he was so excited to see his wife and was like missing her so much. So again, he started having some intimacy with her and whatever, and could not stop, and he really wanted to have sexual relationship with her, and that is intercourse. Now remember, he was on travel, so his mind and his brain is processing that he's not fasting, right? Because he broke it for a legitimate reason and he just arrived home and what have you. And being too overwhelmed with excitement and missing his wife and what have you, he didn't think about it at all, about pushing his wife to have intercourse with him, because all his mind is, I'm okay to do it because I am not even fasting. And he completely forgot about his wife. She's a resident, she's fasting. So, what would be the answer? The answer is, it would be no penalty on him because he's not fasting, he was on travel. But the penalty would apply on her. And the answer, yes, she has to never allow him to do that. And to remind him very, very, uh, you know, um, um, firmly that I cannot do that because this is going to cause me to go. It's not about just the heavy penalty. Allah made the heavy penalty just to sense and gauge the seriousness of this. Allah wants us to refrain from permissible act for the betterment of our life. This is how we discipline ourselves, to control our desires, not to allow our desires to control us. And we feel always weak whenever we get excited, whatever we just do haram. No, Allah wanted to train us for that discipline with things that we love, food, drink, sexual activities with our spouses and what have you. No, you have to be disciplined and you have to be in control of your whims and desires. So she had to tell him no and to be firm about it. Now, not being firm about it would have put her, now would actually put her into um, uh, the expiation, the hefty expiation of fasting the 60 consecutive days. Now, what about a question? Someone during the day of Ramadan, for no legitimate reason, got tired of fasting. Not that he got tired, mean that he's getting sick. No, no, no. He just got tired of fasting, got tempted, saw food, got invited for like a very open, very delicious buffet and what have you, and invited from his co-workers. It was a very important meeting at work, and or an interview, let's say like an interview for a good offer, job offer, but he was not a travel, he was local. And he was surprised that all the people that going to that job fair and what have you and being interviewed and whatever. And part of the interview, the aftermath of interview, they wanted, I'm just giving like a scenario. They wanted to see the skills of socializing with the people that got interviewed. So they've done a general invitation for people to have lunch together or dinner together and what have you. And he felt very pressured. So he decided and took the niyyah and intention to break the fast. He said, Khalas, I'm not going to lose this opportunity. I'm sorry. Allah, inshallah, is the most forgiving. They would never understand that. I have to, because that's part of socializing. I have to sit with them on the table. I have to eat. I have drink, and I have to to smile and what have you. So he had the intention to break the fast. As they approached the actual dinner and they stood in line and whatever, and they wanted to have their buffet, and he got his plate and whatever, his subconscious consciousness came back to him and said, what am I doing? This is Ramadan. I can't please people in order, I cannot displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to please people. So he decided to actually come clear with the people that interviewed him, and he decided, you know what, I'm not doing that. Last minute, he decided not to do it, what have you. So, what would be the ruling? The ruling is actually, it's great that he did that, but the ruling that he actually missed that day. It invalidates. Remember that the niyyah is a rukun, it's a pillar of the act, it's the pillar of everything. Without intention, we cannot have our prayer accepted, our dua accepted, our fast accepted, our hajj accepted, our umrah accepted. Nothing gets accepted. We have to have the pure niyyah of doing the worship act. I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. He decided that I'm not doing it anymore. I'm gonna break my fast. That's it. What the only thing that prevented him is the food was not offered at that second. As he was offered the food later on, he reconsidered. No. It would be very similar to the same scenario that, he decided he saw khamr and alcohol on the table, and he decided to go along with the people. He didn't tell them, I'm a Muslim and I don't drink, whatever, and he actually drank. He did something haram, right? Because he decided to break, or not break, but break the rule of not drinking. Someone will ask, However, he actually drank, but the fasting, he didn't actually break. He didn't put anything. He didn't swallow anything. True, absolutely true. But that's the secret of it is the niyyah. The niyyah is that he wanted. See, remember, niyyah is part of the fasting. Without a niyyah, of keeping the fasting intact, then this is a special niyyah besides the general niyyah of fasting. No, remember we said every day we have a new niyyah that I am going to refrain from all this during the day. And the same thing would happen. I would break the fast with having a niyyah that I'm breaking the fast. It's like someone that actually wants to break the fast. I just want to break it now, and they're looking to find water or food or anything or a piece of gum to chew on it and what have you. So now they broke the fast, but they couldn't find anything, and they ended up, they said later on, they said khalas, I'll just continue the fast and whatever. No, it will not be accepted. I hope that this is clear. So inshallah, a question is, a couple who are having difficulties having children, and doing a lot of testing and what have you, for them to be able to have children together and what have you, and they got booked for an appointment where they actually have to go during Ramadan to submit their testing. Like the man has to submit his sperms and what have you, and a culture would be taken from the woman and what have you. Would that invalidate the fast of the man to break? And they need to break the fast in order to be energized and what have you. The answer is no, they cannot break the fast. That's not a legitimate reason to break the fast. And if they actually do, it will require the expiation and the makeup of that day and the istighfar, and to refrain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day. If the man actually, if the woman just kept her fasting and just went through the testing and whatever, her fast is intact. But the fast of her husband is not intact because he submitted his sperms. So again, remember the discharge of fluid outside of his body of having sperms ejaculated outside of his body, that would invalidate on purpose. That is, invalidate his fast. Now, a question would come, if someone does an act of invalidation, someone does an act that actually invalidates the fast, like the one we mentioned throughout the class, but did it out of ignorance, right? So someone did it out of ignorance, any of the fast, ate, drank, what have you, or did, but out of ignorance. Uh, they we adopted the what would be the ruling? Would that actually invalidate the fast and what have you? Remember, ignorance, not forgetfulness. Um, so I think we covered that. Yes, I covered that at the beginning of the class. Last one, inshallah ta'ala. Um, no, actually, we didn't cover that. We covered if someone actually broke the fast at the beginning of the class, broke the fast on purpose. Now we're talking about someone that actually did, for example, one during the day ate food and drank water, not knowing that part of fasting is actually to refrain from water, to refrain from drinking and what have you. Now, Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad believe that this is not an excuse. Someone that wants to fast the month of Ramadan has to have enough knowledge to understand what puts it intact and what invalidates it. So they say his fast is not valid, right? And that's the majority of the scholars say that. So let's not put it just Imam Shafi'i and Ahmad, the majority of scholars. However, there is an opinion for Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Ibn al-Qayyim to say no, because remember we said in order to invalidate anyone's fast, we said that they have to have the knowledge, al-ilm, and then at-tadhkira, that they remember that this act is wrong and they are not forgetful. It's not out of forgetfulness. And al-irada, which is the intent to do it, no one is forcing them into it. So they said these three conditions that would invalidate any fast are not intact. They're not, because they didn't know any better when they drank water, when they ate food, right? And what have you. No, they said it would not, and they compared that to someone that is exactly like forgetfulness. Okay, forgetfulness. However, we are going to still adopt the opinion with the majority of scholars, because again, 5 pillars, 5 foundations of Islam, we need to understand the rulings of them, at least the basics rulings. But for someone to become a Muslim and wants to pray and have no clue how to pray, and have no clue how to fast, and have no clue what to do and what not to do, then it would not be really acceptable, because that's going to make them fall into so many other wrongful acts and what have you. Last question is, if someone puts a lipstick on, if a lady put a lipstick on her lips, or actually for that matter, if someone during dryness and whatever, they put chopsticks on their lips and what have you, and it has flavor, and they were very careful, but actually as they got carried on and they forgot, and they kind of wet their tongue with it, and they felt the flavor, what would they do now? The flavor is inside their mouth. Again, that would not invalidate, but they need to be very careful not to swallow that flavor, what have you. If they actually did, what if they actually did? It would not. It would be forgiven, because this is something that was not intentional, and they forgot completely about the flavor, and now they can't get it out, and now they had just to swallow it, and it's such a small amount that would not really invalidate a fast, inshallah ta'ala. But the most important thing, because they did not intentionally do that, it just didn't happen, and they got stuck. And now they know it's the flavor is there, but they try. So that's why you try your best to get rid of the flavor. But if there was something remaining, then it's fine, inshallah ta'ala. Same thing would go with other similar things that would apply to this question, inshallah. So that should be enough for today, inshallah ta'ala, for the rulings. And we will continue tomorrow for other questions. And as I mentioned, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to give priority now all the questions that pertains to fasting. If we finish it, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, we would go into some of the ahkam of witr and what have you, and the night prayer and what have you, and then i'tikaf and what have you. But there is could be a possibility that if we don't finish, we would just, inshallah ta'ala, stick with this series for fasting. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us life, we will continue later on series of ahkamu as-salah, and the witr prayer would be included, the night prayer would be included, i'tikaf, praying during i'tikaf would be included. But i'tikaf itself, that pertains to fasting during Ramadan, and this, inshallah ta'ala, we will try to cover bi'idhnillah during these sessions before the end of this Ramadan. Jazakumullah khair wa barakallah feekum. May Allah reward you for your commitment and being with us all every day, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you tomorrow, inshallah.